always thought I'd know right away if James cheated on me. I thought I'd sense it the second he touched me, or hear it in his voice when he said, "I love you." But the truth? It was slower, quieter, more poisonous than I ever imagined. It started with his phone, the way he flipped it over on the table, screen down, like I might read something I shouldn't. His eyes darted to it constantly, fingers twitching like a man waiting for a hit. At first I told myself it was work. He'd been promoted, after all. More meetings, more pressure, more clients needing his attention. A good wife understands these things, right? A good wife smiles and says, "I get it, honey." And I did. Until the excuses stretched thinner and thinner, and the space between us got wider and wider. We used to spend Saturday mornings wrapped in blankets, watching old movies, sharing bagels in bed. Lately, Saturdays were for last-minute conferences or emergency calls. I watched him dress, suit sharp, cologne just a little heavier than usual, and felt my stomach twist into knots I couldn't untangle. Ava saw it before I did. She always did. Over coffee one afternoon, she leaned forward, eyes sharp, voice low. "Liv, when was the last time you two actually talked? Like really talked?" I laughed it off, waved her away. "We're fine, just busy." But even as I said it, the words tasted sour in my mouth. The distance grew louder. In bed, James turned away before I could curl into his chest. At dinner, his phone buzzed, and he smiled at the screen like a secret lover, not his wife. My heart pounded. I told myself I was overthinking, that ugly, gnawing voice women get trained to swallow. The breaking point wasn't dramatic. It was small, almost imperceptible. We were at a party, and I watched him across the room, laughing a little too closely with Samantha, his coworker. Her hand grazed his arm. His smile went soft. My blood ran cold. I wanted to scream, but I just smiled. Because what else could I do? "At home?" I asked, softly, carefully. "Is there something I should know?" He laughed, kissed my forehead. "Baby, don't be silly. She's just a colleague." I nodded, heartbreaking, pretending to believe. But deep down, I knew. He lied, and I kept smiling. Nights grew unbearable. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, feeling his body inches away but miles apart. Every touch felt calculated, every word rehearsed. I clung to the hope that maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was paranoid. But the truth sat heavy in my gut, coiled like a snake. I stopped eating. I stopped sleeping. I stopped being myself. Every moment became a game of pretending to be the happy wife, pretending to trust, pretending not to notice the lipstick on his collar that wasn't mine. Ava's voice echoed in my head constantly. "Liv, you deserve better. You deserve better." But I wasn't ready to hear it. Not yet. Not when my heart still wanted to believe in the man I'd built my life around. The whispers in my head grew louder. Check his phone. Follow him. Ask. Again. But every time, I stopped myself. I didn't want to know. Because knowing meant breaking. And breaking meant losing the life I had clung to so tightly. I remember one night, standing in front of the mirror, staring at myself. I looked older. Sadder. My eyes weren't mine anymore. I pressed a hand to the glass and whispered, "What are you doing, Olivia?" But I had no answer. I watched James sleep, his face soft, peaceful, like a man with nothing to hide. My chest ached. My lungs tightened. I wanted to shake him awake, demand the truth, scream until my voice cracked. But instead, I curled into myself, swallowed my questions, and let the night swallow me. The erosion was slow, patient, like water carving into stone. I became someone I didn't recognize, quiet, tense, small. But somewhere deep inside, a spark flickered, a quiet, fragile voice whispering, "You're not crazy, you're not wrong, you know," and I did. A woman like me should trust her husband, right? That's what I told myself over and over as I folded his laundry, packed his lunches, kissed him goodbye at the door. I was the loyal wife, the supportive partner, the woman who held the home together while he chased success. I told myself, "You're overthinking, you're being insecure, you're imagining things." But the knot in my stomach never eased. The questions started creeping in late at night. Why did he suddenly need to travel so often? Why did Samantha's name show up on his screen at 11 p.m.? Why did he change his passcode without telling me? I told myself, "Don't be the paranoid wife." I smiled through the panic. I pushed down the tightness in my chest. Ava was the only one who dared to say it, aloud. One evening, she poured me a glass of wine and said softly, "Liv, you know, sometimes trusting too hard blinds you." I laughed, waved her off, pretending I wasn't breaking inside. I didn't want her to see how thin my hope had stretched. James came home late that night, smelling faintly of perfume that wasn't mine. I wrapped my arms around him anyway, burying my nose in his collar, trying to convince myself it was nothing. His hands rested on my back, but they felt mechanical, detached. My heart squeezed painfully. Still, I smiled. Days passed in a haze. I watched him dress sharply for meetings, slipping out the door with a distracted kiss. I watched the way his phone stayed glued to his side, even in the shower. My fingers itched to grab it, to check, to know. But I didn't. Because knowing meant everything would break. I lay awake every night, anxiety curling tighter and tighter in my chest. I told myself, just ask him. Sit him down, have the conversation. But every time I tried, my throat closed up, my hands trembled, my heart pounded. I was terrified of the answer. I tried to focus on work, on errands, on anything else. But his absence filled every room like a ghost. I sat at the dinner table alone, staring at his empty seat, pushing food around my plate. The loneliness felt sharper than a knife. Ava called one evening, her voice worried. "Liv, come stay with me for a few days. You need space." I almost said yes. Almost. But I stayed. Because I wasn't ready to let go. Not yet. James kept smiling, kept kissing me goodnight, kept pretending. And I kept pretending too, pretending I didn't notice how far he'd drifted, how much he'd changed, how much he lied. The worst part wasn't even the betrayal. It was the gaslighting. The way he made me feel crazy for suspecting anything. The way he smoothed over every doubt with practiced charm. I started questioning my own mind. I stopped telling Ava everything. I didn't want to hear her say what I already knew. I didn't want to feel the weight of her truth crushing down on me. I wanted to believe. One night, James kissed me softly and whispered, "You're my everything." I closed my eyes, forcing the tears back, nodding against his chest. I wanted to believe him so badly it hurt. But in the dark, alone, I whispered to myself, "He's lying. You know he's lying." And the truth sat there, sharp and unmovable, waiting for me to finally face it. I'll never forget the night I finally let myself break. I stood alone in our bathroom, staring at my reflection under harsh white light. My face looked pale, older, my eyes sunken from sleepless nights. He lied, and I kept smiling. The words rolled through my head like a cruel chant, each repetition cutting deeper. I ran my fingers over my wedding ring, twisting it back and forth, wondering when it had stopped meaning what it used to. I had clung to the symbol for so long, the the promises, the dreams, the shared life. But now it just felt heavy, like a chain. I opened James's dresser drawer, heart pounding, and found the receipts. Dinners at restaurants we'd never been. Together. Hotel bookings on nights I thought he was working late. My hands shook as I traced the dates, the lies lining up in black and white. I sat down on the floor, clutching the papers, a cold numbness spreading through me. I wasn't even crying. I was just empty. Hollow. Like all the grief I'd been avoiding had finally crashed in at once, stealing the air from my lungs. Ava called me that night, but I couldn't answer. I couldn't speak. I sat in the dark, wrapping my arms around myself, rocking back and forth, whispering, "You were right, you were right," over and over like a prayer. When James came home, I was sitting at the kitchen table, the receipts spread out in front of me. He walked in, smiled casually, kissed the top of my head. "Hey, babe," he murmured, and my heart cracked. I didn't confront him. I didn't yell. I just sat there, staring at the man I no longer recognized. I wanted to ask, "Who are you?" I wanted to scream, "How could you do this?" But the words caught in my throat, strangled by the years of loyalty, the years of love, the years of trying so hard to make us work. That night, I crawled into bed beside him, feeling the steady rise and fall of his chest, pretending to sleep. My eyes stayed wide open, staring into the darkness, feeling the weight of heartbreak settle like a stone in my chest. I realized then, I wasn't just mourning the betrayal. I was mourning the loss of who we had been. The couple I thought we were, the future I thought we had, the man I thought I knew. The next morning I looked at myself in the mirror and whispered, "It's over." My voice was small, shaky, but the truth in it rang clear. I knew I couldn't stay like this. I couldn't keep pretending. I spent the day walking through our house, touching the furniture we'd picked together, the photos we'd hung, the memories we'd built. Every corner held echoes of a life that was no longer real. I called Ava that night, voice breaking, and said, "I need to do something. I can't just sit here anymore." She didn't hesitate. "I'm here. Whatever you need, Liv." I sat, in the dark, clutching my phone, breathing hard. The grief pulsed through me in waves, sharp and relentless. But under it, a small ember of something new flickered to life. Clarity. The next morning I woke up different. My eyes were swollen, my throat raw, but my chest felt tight with something sharper. Fury. This wasn't love. This was war. For the first time in months, maybe even years, I wasn't just drowning in heartbreak. I was angry. And anger, I realized, was power. I moved through the house quietly, deliberately. I collected the receipts, the text messages I'd found, the photos Ava had helped me gather from social media. Piece by piece, I built the timeline of betrayal. Every lie, every excuse, every night spent in someone else's arms. James noticed the shift. That evening, he reached for me, smiling softly, voice dripping with practiced warmth. "You've been quiet, baby. Everything okay?" I met his gaze calmly, tilting my head. "Everything's fine, James." My voice was steady, almost sweet. He smiled, satisfied, turning back to his phone. I realized, with a bitter flicker of amusement, just how easy it was for him to believe his own performance. He was so sure I'd never walk away, so sure I'd stay small, stay silent. And maybe that's why the rage inside me kept growing. He had underestimated me. Ava came over late that night. We sat at the kitchen table, documents spread out between Us, her eyes fierce, her hands gripping mine tightly. "What's the plan?" she asked. I took a deep breath, feeling my heart thud hard in my chest. "I'm going to end it," I whispered, "and I'm going to do it on my terms." We spent hours planning, every detail laid out carefully. I didn't want to scream. I didn't want to beg. I wanted control. I wanted the power shift. I wanted the moment to be mine. The wedding reception was the perfect stage. James's best friend was getting married, and of course Samantha would be there, all smiles and champagne, laughing beside James like she belonged there. I could already picture it. The toasts, the speeches, the delicate clinking of glasses. Ava squeezed my hand hard. "You sure you want to do this publicly?" I smiled faintly, feeling the fire rise in my chest. "Yes," I murmured, "because they both need to know who they've been playing with." The divorce papers sat ready, in my purse, crisp and clean, every signature in place. I'd been quiet long enough. I was done being the heartbroken wife. I was ready to become the woman who chose herself. That night, I lay awake in bed, James's arm draped loosely over my waist, his breath soft against my neck. My eyes stayed open, staring into the darkness, counting down the hours. Tomorrow, everything would change. The morning of the wedding reception, I moved with a calm I hadn't felt in months. I showered, styled my hair, slid into the black dress James loved, the one he always said made me look stunning. They underestimated the quiet woman. My hands didn't shake. My heart didn't race. Everything inside me was still, focused. James came into the bedroom, adjusting his cufflinks, his cologne lingering in the air. "You look amazing, baby," he murmured, pressing a kiss to my cheek. I smiled softly, meeting his gaze in the mirror. "Thank you, love." My voice was even, smooth, practiced. He grinned, grabbing his keys. "Let's go make a night of it." The car ride was filled with soft music, his hand resting on my knee, his voice humming along to old songs. I watched the trees blur past the window, felt the weight of the papers in my purse, felt the shift rising in my chest like a quiet drumbeat. When we arrived, the ballroom sparkled with lights and laughter. James swept me into the crowd easily, charming everyone, slipping effortlessly between conversations. And then I saw her. Samantha, standing by the champagne table, laughing, eyes glittering as she caught sight of us. She moved closer during the speeches, lingering near James, her smile just a touch too familiar, her hand brushing his arm when she thought I wasn't looking. My stomach twisted, but I kept my face serene. I clutched my purse gently, feeling the crisp edges of the divorce packet inside. Ava caught my eye across the room, giving me the smallest nod, her expression fierce and proud. She knew. She knew how hard I'd worked to reach this moment, how long I'd held myself together, how ready I was to take my power back. The toast began. James stood, glass in hand, flashing his signature grin, thanking the couple, making everyone laugh. Samantha clinked her glass softly against his, her eyes shining, her gaze flicking just briefly to me. My fingers tightened around the papers, rose slowly, deliberately, lifting my glass, smiling faintly as I stepped forward. James turned, eyebrows raised, pleasantly surprised. "Olivia, love, you want to say something?" My heart pounded, but my voice stayed steady. "Just a small toast," I murmured. Samantha leaned in, her glass raised. I met her eyes directly, feeling the room hush slightly, sensing the shift begin. And then calmly, I reached into my purse, pulled out the sealed envelope, and handed it to her. The silence that followed was sharp as a blade. Samantha froze, her glass hovering midair, her eyes darting from the envelope in her hand to my calm, steady face. That was the moment everything changed. The room around us hushed, laughter fading. Champagne flutes paused halfway to lips as the energy snapped tight. James turned toward me slowly, a puzzled smile tugging at his mouth. "Olivia, what's this?" I smiled softly, a cool, deliberate curve of my lips. "Open it," I murmured. My heart thudded in my chest, but I kept my chin high, my eyes locked on Samantha, who fumbled with the flap, her fingers trembling slightly as she pulled out the crisp, neatly signed divorce papers. James's smile faltered, confusion flickering across his face as Samantha's eyes widened in shock. She glanced up sharply, color draining from her cheeks, and for the first time, I saw fear spark in her gaze. Around us, the crowd shifted, whispers rippling through the elegant room. James reached for the envelope, snatching it from Samantha's hands, eyes scanning the first page. His face paled, his mouth opening, closing, no sound coming out. "Liv, baby, what is this?" he stammered. I tilted my head slightly, feeling the burn of long-contained rage settle into icy clarity. "It's the end, James," I said softly. "The end of the lies. The end of the pretending. The end of you thinking I wouldn't find out." My voice was even, almost gentle, but every word struck like a hammer. Ava stood at the edge of the room, her eyes locked on mine, her mouth curling into a fierce, proud smile. James stepped forward, his hands outstretched, his face crumpling into that familiar, practiced expression of regret. "Liv, wait. We can talk about this." I raised a hand, stopping him cold. "No, James. We're past talking." Samantha let out a shaky breath, her glass rattling slightly as she set it down, cheeks flushed with humiliation. The tension in the room was electric, every eye flicking between us, every breath held. I smoothed my dress calmly, feeling the slow, delicious rise of control flood through me. For the first time in years, I wasn't the woman left guessing, waiting, hoping. I was the woman setting the terms. James's voice cracked slightly. "Please, Liv, let's go outside, let's just—" I smiled faintly, shaking my head. "You can explain it to her, James," I murmured, nodding toward Samantha. "You've had plenty of practice lying to me. Let's see how you do with the truth." A hush fell over the room as I stepped back, my glass still in hand, my shoulders straight. Ava moved to my side silently, her presence a steady anchor. I felt her hand squeeze mine, grounding me, reminding me, "You did it." James stood frozen, papers trembling in his hands, Samantha's face pale, the entire room watching them both crumble under the weight of exposure. And I just smiled, because they had no idea how long I'd been waiting for this. I stood tall, feeling the silence wrap around me like armor. I just smiled, because they had no idea. No idea how many nights I'd stayed awake, no idea how long I'd practiced this moment in my mind, no idea how satisfying it would feel to hand Samantha, the mistress, the divorce notice in front of everyone. James was stammering now, his face flushed, sweat beading at his temples. "Liv, come on," he whispered harshly, reaching for my arm, but I stepped back, calm and steady. "No, James," I said quietly. "This is your moment, remember? Smile for your friends." Samantha's hands were shaking, her lips parted, as if she wanted to speak, but no words came out. She glanced around the room, eyes darting nervously, realizing the audience she never expected. I watched her shoulders shrink, the confidence drain from her posture. Ava squeezed my arm gently, her voice a soft anchor. "You ready to leave, Liv?" I turned toward her slowly, heart thudding but breath steady. "Almost," I murmured, casting one last glance over the room. The guests whispered behind delicate hands, eyes wide, shocked. They had all bought the image James had crafted. The devoted husband, the charming professional, the man who always knew how to win a room. But now they saw the cracks, the ugly truth peeking through. James reached out again, desperation in his voice. "Liv, baby, we can fix this. Let's go talk, please." I shook my head slowly, offering him a small, pitying smile. "You lied. James, you built this. You can stand in it now." His mouth opened, closed, his hands falling to his sides. Samantha stumbled back a step, her face pale, her eyes flicking between us as if searching for a script, a lifeline, something to make this nightmare disappear. But there was no script anymore. I raised my glass one last time, tilting it toward them gently. "To honesty," I murmured, my voice soft but slicing through the room like a blade. "And to knowing when to walk away." Ava let out a quiet breath, pride gleaming in her eyes. Together, we turned, heels clicking softly against the marble floor. My heartbeat steady, my spine straight. I felt the eyes on my back, the whispers, the shock. But none of it touched me. I was untouchable now. As I stepped out into the cool night air, the stars glittering above, I exhaled slowly, feeling the weight slide off my shoulders. I'd carried this pain for so long, let it shape me, let it dim me. Not anymore, because tonight, I wasn't the woman betrayed, I was the woman who walked away. I sat on Ava's couch later that night, barefoot, wrapped in a blanket, a mug of tea cradled between my hands. The city lights blinked softly outside the window, and for the first time in what felt like years, my chest wasn't tight. He toasted his affair. I toasted my freedom. Ava sat beside me, her legs curled under her, watching me carefully. "How do you feel?" she asked quietly. I smiled faintly, staring down into the mug. "Lighter," I whispered. Like I finally put something down I should have dropped a long time ago. I thought about James, standing frozen in that ballroom, the papers trembling in his hands, his carefully crafted life crumbling around him. I thought about Samantha, her wide eyes, her stunned silence, the way she shrank under the weight of public exposure. I felt no pity, no sadness, only release. For years I had shrunk myself to keep a man who never deserved me. I had folded, softened, stayed small just to keep the peace. But tonight, I realized, peace built on silence isn't peace at all. It's surrender. And I was done surrendering. I leaned back against the couch, closing my eyes, letting the hum of the city wash over me. There would be legal meetings, settlements, uncomfortable conversations ahead. But none of that scared me anymore. Because I had already survived the hardest part, choosing myself. Ava nudged me gently, her voice warm. "You were incredible, Liv." I opened my eyes slowly, smiling softly at her. "Thank you," I whispered. And for the first time, I meant it not just for her, but for me too. I got up quietly, padding over to the window, pressing my fingertips to the cool glass. I watched the cars move, the lights flicker, the world spinning on, indifferent to my small, private revolution. And I smiled. Tomorrow, I would call my lawyer. Tomorrow, I would start the next chapter. Tomorrow, I would begin again. Not as James's wife, not as the betrayed woman, but as Olivia. Whole. Enough, I thought about the girl I'd been when I married him. Bright-eyed, hopeful, eager to please. I thought about the woman I was now. Bruised, yes, but unbroken. Sharper, stronger, awake. And I knew, deep in my bones, that no matter what came next, I would never let myself be that small again. because he toasted his affair. And I toasted my freedom.